Writing is a skill, not a talent. This difference is important because a skill can be improved by practice. With the quote of Robert Stacy McCain, I would like to welcome you to the guest lecture on pre-stage writing, the most significant stage. Before starting the lecture, I would like to brief you about the overview of the guest lecture. The lecture entails a very essential component of communication skills, which is writing. A structured piece of writing requires planning and forethought. Writing is not an innate quality in us, it is a skill that needs to be built and honed. The lecture will specifically cover pre-writing, which is the planning process. It consists of determining one's purpose and audience, narrowing one's topic, and creating a framework for the documentation. The talk will also focus on essential instances and examples from the real life situations concerning academic and professional space. So this lecture is organized by Department of Languages, Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University, Meerut. And I am Dr. Rafat Khanam, Associate Professor, Department of Languages, Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University. Moving forward, I would like to brief you about the university. Swami Vivekanand Subharti University is a university under Section 2F of the University Grant Commission Act 1956 under Swami Vivekanand Subharti Vishwavidyalaya, Uttar Pradesh Adhiniyam 2008, passed by Uttar Pradesh Legislature and assented by the Honorable Governor of Uttar Pradesh in September 2008. The university is presently functioning under the aegis of Mahayana Theravada Buddhist Religious and Charitable Trust, Meerut. It is renowned for its exemplary service in the field of education, healthcare, and social welfare. The university is situated on National Highway 58, Delhi Bypass Road, Meerut. The campus, aptly called Subhartipuram, is spread over a sprawling area of about 250 acres of land, comprising magnificent buildings, lush green lawns, and vibrant surrounding, with 5,000 people dedicated to make the university magnum opus in the world. The university offers diploma, UG and PG, and PhD level courses in all disciplines like medical, dental, nursing, physiotherapy, paramedical, pharmacy, naturopathy, yogic sciences, engineering, management, law, journalism, education, library, art and social sciences, and hotel management. The university has also started a number of courses through distance education approved by the Distance Education Bureau of UGC. Swami Vivekananda Subharti University is NAAC-A accredited and has received numerous national and international awards. The university has over 58 MOUs with excellent infrastructure and an environment for research-driven learning. Moving forward, I would like to introduce you with the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Faculty of Art and Social Sciences plays a pivotal role in guiding the students on a journey of self-discovery while helping them become critical thinkers, unmatched communicators, avid researchers, and creative problem solvers. The award objective of Faculty of Art and Social Sciences is to provide students with a global educational experience, preparing them to excel in an ever-changing and competitive international job market. Faculty of Art and Social Sciences offers one of the most holistic and empowering educational experiences by the virtue of a long tradition of teaching excellence marked by a new age repertoire of teaching learning mechanism. Now, here is a brief description about the Department of Languages. Rahul Sanskritayana Subharati School of Linguistics and Foreign Languages was founded by Dr. Atul Krishna, founder of Swami Vivekanand Subharati University and Subharati Movement, in the year 2019 as an elite department. Since its inception, the department has been providing excellent teaching and in-depth research in linguistics. The department provides language skills and training to the students from all the other faculties of the university. In its nascent stage, the department is imparting English language and speaking skills, which has become the universal language for all Indians and foreign nationals, not only for career opportunities, but for day-to-day interaction between the students within our cosmopolitan campus. Besides English, the department also teaches Hindi and Sanskrit to foreign students. Now, I would like to request our Dean Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, Dr. Sudhir Tyagi sir, for welcome address. Over to you, sir. I think due to some technical glitch, our Dean sir is unable to connect. We can wait for a little mm, time for some seconds, please. On behalf of our Department of Languages, I would like to welcome everybody whosoever present today. So I address welcome note. I extend a warm welcome to the guest speaker of the day, Dr. Gurpyari Bhatnagar, Associate Professor of English, Sharda School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Sharda University, Greater Noida. Welcome, madam. You accepted the invitation to interact with our student on a very important topic, that is pre-stage writing, the most significant stage. You're most welcome, ma'am. I welcome all the faculty members who have joined us virtually from the various constituent colleges of the university. I welcome students, research scholars, and all the participants who are associated with us today to broaden their horizon of knowledge. Welcome you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Khanum, for this honor. I accept this honor with all humility. Um, so I would like to first share my presentation, and then we would. Okay.
Just a minute, ma'am. Just a minute.
Okay. All right.
Uh, Before moving forward, it is actually very means necessary to know about the guest speaker. So I would like to introduce you in brief about the guest speaker. See, Dr. Gurpyari Bhatnagar, who is PhD in English, currently teaches at Sharda University, Greater Noida. Over her 18 years of teaching career, she has taught courses in professional communication, literary theory and criticism, classical literature, mythology and consciousness studies. Her research work has been accepted in academic conferences as well as for publication in several journals, India and abroad. Her most recent research interest includes exploring theories within consciousness studies. She has presented the research in the Science of Consciousness conferences at the University of Arizona, USA, and Interlaken, Switzerland. Her recent presentations in the area have been at Dayalbag Science of Consciousness, conferences organized in collaboration with the University of Kiel, Germany, and the University of Waterloo, Canada. An alumna of Dayalbag Educational Institute, she is also presently associated with its distance learning program. Her research has been published in journals of repute, the most recent being Spirituality Studies, first quartile Scopus indexed journal. She also indulges in writing stories, poems, and short reviews which have been published by Sahitya Academy and Muse India. Next. Our honorable guest speaker to address our gathering, please.
Thank you so much for the honor, Dr. Khanam. It's been a privilege to be here with all of you. So the topic of the presentation is pre-writing stage, which is one of the most important stages of writing. So I assume that my target audience are the students, and therefore the examples that we would take would cater to the student community. Um, so I would begin with extending my gratitude to the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University, very particularly Dean Dr. Sudhir Tyagi. I think maybe because of some technical glitches, he was not able to join us. Head of Department, Dr. Tushti Sharma, Department of Languages, and of course to the convener, Dr. Rafat Khanum, because of whom this particular session was, has been realized. And of course, the organizers and the IT support system, the faculty members, and the student community, whom I would be addressing today. So to begin with, when we take a look at a number of academic situations, in the environment, they could be both formal and informal situations. So for instance, when we go to the classroom, there are classroom sessions, there are class discussions, right, which could be our semi-formal situations. In the corridor, you could, you meet your professors, you have a chat with them, put your queries to them. So, there are informal situations, where they address, those queries. Then you have your chats with your friends. And then there are writing sessions, where you're asked to, submit the assignments, submit, you know, class tests. So there are a number of situations, that we all meet, in the the aspect of communication that comprises four important skills. So we have LSRW, so the ones who have been attending the sessions of communication skills. So you all know that there are four essential skills, which are LSRW: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And today's session would address the fourth skill, which is writing, which is one of our most important academic skill. But then this is, one skill which also translates into your career field. So once you step out of the university, right, you're going to join a profession. So this is one skill that you would require, right? And therefore it becomes important for us to have, discussions here around this particular skill. Um, so I think we have all faced the situation. So whether, faculty members and students alike, must have, faced this particular situation in their life, which is, there are a number of thoughts that come across our mind very invariably, but then, you're not able to translate those thoughts into writing. So a number of times you realize that there are certain thoughts that come across your mind, but when it comes to writing, you're not able to put down those thoughts. So now, and therefore, it is important for us to really reflect, on, what is actually going wrong, right? Why is it that, I, have a number of ideas, but then I'm not able to translate, those ideas. So two important stages here, one stage which is ideation, and the next stage which is encoding. Ideation, where a number of ideas, come to your head. The second stage, which is encoding, where you're translating those ideas into, writing or into speaking, right? But then what is it that we do? We generally overlook the first stage, right? Which is ideation. Ideation itself is a very, very elaborate stage, which is part of our pre-writing stage, right? And therefore, this stage of pre-writing, where you need to think of, what your target audience would be, what is the purpose of your writing, what is the approach that you're going to use, right? So this is very important for us to reflect on these important stages, right? So pre-writing becomes an essential stage, right? So before we sit to write, it becomes important for us to plan, right? So for any sound architectural building, right? So I would like to use the solution here. For any sound architectural building, it is very important for us to lay, the stones very effectively, right? So unless we lay the stones effectively, we'll not be able to have, this sound architectural building, right? Um, so, so what is the very first thing, that we really need to ask of us? Two important questions there. So what knowledge does the audience already have concerning the subject? And what do you know about the language level of the audience? So two important ideas there: subject competence and linguistic competence would be, right? For instance, session, right? Um, I wanted to know my audience, what my audience would be. So if it is the student community, then my discussion would surround, my ideas in the session, would entail the student community, right? We'll take some examples here. Now, supposingly, I say go to a conference, I have to address the uh, people there in the conference, and the topic is, say, for instance, the topic entails consciousness studies, right? Um, in that particular case, right, my audience would be very different from if supposingly I come back to my university and my dean asks me to write on this particular topic for the college magazine, right? So in that case, I know my audience is going to be different in this case. Why? Because this would entail not only the faculty members, but also my students, right? Students not from just School of Humanities and Social Sciences. The student target audience could also be from, say, other schools, outside of my school, which could be, say, School of Engineering and Technology, School of Dental Sciences, right? School of Medical Sciences, School of Architecture. So my report here has to cater to a number of schools, right? And therefore, my audience is very different from the audience that I had targeted when I had presented my paper in the conference. And therefore, the report that I'm going to write on the same topic is going to be extremely different, right? From what I had presented in the conference. Why? Because my audience is a heterogeneous group now. It's not a homogeneous group, right? It comprises people, it comprises students, faculty members from different schools, and therefore a heterogeneous group here, right? And therefore, it becomes very important for the writer to know one, the prior knowledge of the audience, that becomes extremely important, but also the language level of the audience becomes important with us, right? And therefore, both knowledge competence and subject, which is subject competence and the linguistic competence, these two become important areas of acknowledgement when we have to analyze our audience, right? Um, so now audience analysis becomes extremely important. Uh, Before that, I would take you to this particular slide, which is a very interesting slide, which tells us the significance of the audience, right? So this is one uh, it, very interesting story of a salesman, right, who had gone to Saudi Arabia, but then he is very disappointed, right? So he's a salesman of Coca-Cola. He returns from his assignment to Saudi Arabia, and he meets his friend. So his friend asks him, why he's so disappointed. So he says, why weren't you successful with the Saudis? So the salesman explained, when I got posted, I was very, very confident that I would make a good sales pitch. But then I had a problem. I didn't know how to speak Arabic. So I planned to convey the message through 3 posters. And he did these 3 posters and he put these posters all over. And the first poster read something like this, where a man was lying in the hot desert, sand, totally exhausted and fainting. The second poster, where this man, drinks the Coca-Cola. And the third poster, where this man is totally refreshed, once he has this drink. So the friend says, it is something very terrific, and therefore, this should have actually worked. But then he explains that, it did not really work because I did not know my audience. I did not know that they read from right to left, not from left to right, but from right to left. So look at that, we have simple posters that he had planned, but then he planned in a very wrong manner. Why? Because he did not really know his audience well. So it is very important for us to know our audience in order to plan ahead, right? And therefore this becomes a very, very important part of pre-writing, right? So very important stage where you must know your audience and then plan accordingly, right? Now, audience analysis becomes important, right? Why? Because, as I said earlier, it helps us adjust our work to relate to an audience in the best way possible, and you're able to use the right tone and the right style and the specific words, which are very specific to the set of audience that you choose for yourself, right? So when you analyze the audience, there could be demographic analysis, there could be psychographic analysis, there could be situational analysis, right? So you need to decide who's your audience. You need to assess the level of understanding of the audience, as I said earlier, as well. Why? Because you need to resonate with the audience well, right? You need to reach out to them, whether it is speaking or writing. You actually need to reach out to them, right? Why? Why? Because the very purpose of writing is to communicate, right? Because you need to communicate effectively. And if you don't understand your audience, you're not able to gauge your audience, you'll not be able to relate to them at all, right? And therefore, the very first way of one of very important ways of analyzing the audience, where you get the quantitative results, right, of analysis, is your demographic analysis, right? So where you gauge the education, the income, the age, of course, right, the occupation, gender, the sexual orientation. So these are very important parameters of assessing the audience when you are trying to analyze them, right? Um, so this particular analysis would, of course, help you, understand the nature of the audience. Whether your audience is going to be a homogeneous group or your audience is going to be a heterogeneous group, right? So in view of heterogeneous audience, you need to be very, very particular about the style that you're going to use, about the words that you're going to use, right? So as I said earlier, also with the example that I've taken, you should not be really, you should be very, very careful of the technical words that you use, the jargon that you use, right? It has to be audience specific. If it is not audience specific, then you need to actually explain those terms. Explaining the terms become important with us. Another example, that we could take, when we are relating to the student community here, supposingly, there are students from, say, School of Law, for instance. So we have a very essential activity with School of Law, which is, moot. If you have, heard of the term, moot, which is a co-curricular activity at law school, where where the students simulate, court proceedings, right? So now, in this kind of scenario, if supposingly, I am running a college magazine, and I ask, one of the students from the law school, I'm from School of Humanities and Social Sciences, but I would like my students to realize, how this particular proceeding really went. And I request, one of my students from law school to write a report on this particular proceeding, right, on moot for my students, right? So now a student from the law school will have to be very careful, because now here, when he's writing a report, when this particular student, is writing a report, the report is not just specific, is not specific to the School of Law, but is also specific to my school, which is School of Humanities and Social Sciences, where my students may have no idea of, terms like defendant, or, appeal, respondent, right? These could be extremely high sounding words for them, and they might not really understand, if, these words really appear in the report that a student from law school writes, for the college magazine. And therefore, this student will have to be very, very careful of the words, that they use. But then at the same time, the report has to be created in a very, very interesting manner, that fascinates the student from outside of their school, right? So it has to be drawn in a very, very fascinating way, right? So it catches the attention of somebody from outside the school. And therefore, these examples become important for us in order to realize, how important, how essential, audience analysis, could be here, right? Second, important idea is psychographic analysis. So besides, demographic analysis, we have this idea of psychographic analysis, which allows you to understand the values, the belief system, the opinion, right, the attitudes of the of your specific audience. It is very important for us to know the specific attitude, right, and the belief system of the audience. Why? Because we all think and behave differently, right? We've all have had our very different cultural experiences, right? And therefore, it is very important to address these very varied belief systems. For instance, I'll take the example of college magazine again. Supposingly, one of my students has to write on, say, a topic on spirituality, for instance. The student, being from this generation, will think very differently on spirituality, on this particular theme, from how say the faculty members, would think on this particular idea, on this particular theme. And their writing would be extremely different from, how we would like to put across our ideas, right? um, And on this particular and supposingly this particular student, invites me, to say write a conclusion, a very very short review for say their writing. So I also will be very very particular here. Why? Because I'm not just addressing my generation here, but I'm addressing, a generation which may not like to subscribe to a certain religious system, right? To a certain religious system which is uh, which is extremely rigid in nature, right? They would like to explore spirituality. They would like to explore the idea of God in n number of ways, and therefore it becomes very important for me, as a faculty member who is from a different generation, in order to first understand the belief system of my students and then address that, right? And therefore I cannot just impose my ideas on my students through a writing piece, which has to come out in a college magazine, in order to impose, my ideas. That is not, that should not be the purpose, of the writer at all. And therefore the purpose, becomes very important here. What is going to my purpose? Who is going to be my audience? What is it that I'm going to achieve, through this particular writing? Am I really trying to mold the ideas of my students? No, I'm not going to do that. They have their own certain belief system, and I really respect that fact, right? But at the same time, I would also like my students to know my ideas. What is my idea of God, right? What is my idea of religiosity? What is my idea of spiritual orientation? What is my idea of spirituality? And therefore my writing would be something with gray shades, not either black or white, which really tells my audience that I'm not really trying to intrude into their space. I'm not trying to impose myself on them, right? I am giving them space in order to reflect on their ideas in view of my ideas as well. And therefore, there has to be a juxtaposition, right? There has to be intersection of ideas in the writing, and that is extremely important, right? Um, so, two important ideas here, which are our patterns. Our purpose would define our pattern, whether we're going to use deductive pattern or we're going to use inductive pattern, right? So we have, come across these terms, deductive, a number of times, but then, what is the origin, of this term inductive? So if we go back to the classical period, when Aristotle, would build his theories, a very important work by Aristotle is his Poetics, where he has where he had come up with, his theoretical positions, in that particular work. um, and in that particular work, he did not really, come up with theories in vacuum. He had a number of works in front of him, works by Homer, works by Sophocles, when he had to build his theory. So he had really relied on, certain works when he had to build his theories. And from here, we have this term inductive, where you have a number of ideas in front of you. You rely on those ideas and then you build on your own ideas. So that becomes inductive, right? So inductive is where you do not come up with the central idea straight away, but then you form a transition, right, for your audience. And then you come to the central idea. So you come up with something which is not really obviously relating to the larger theme of the topic, right? But not really to the central idea, right? To your thesis statement. You come up with something like that. You may come up with a story, you may come up with some quotes, and then if specifically we're writing about a college article, right? And then you could come up with the central theme, with the thesis statement. So that becomes inductive. So on the other hand, we have deductive, where you come up with the central idea straight away, and then you try to deduce, more ideas from this central idea, right? So we have a number of examples. So if we take the example from our daily conversation, for instance, you want to buy a laptop for yourself. So how do you tell your parents? You do not just go to your parents and tell them that if you already have a laptop, you just don't tell them that, I would like to have another laptop, right? Your parents would obviously, tell you, buy another laptop when you already have one, right? So what becomes very important for you? Maybe, you got your grades, all A's on the report card. You go to your parents, tell them, I got all A's. So my, laptop, that I have is, what I inherited from you. This is what you had been using. And then, this is an old laptop and I would like to buy a new one for myself, for my assignments, for my projects, and also because I've been say would like to use something very latest in terms of technology, and therefore I would like to have another laptop. So your parents would also feel, yes, my child got all A grades, let them have a new laptop. So this is what is inductive. So when you have to persuade somebody, when you have to convince somebody, right? Then we actually use inductive approach. When you have to come up with something undesirable, something unpleasant, we again use something. We use a pattern which is inductive, where you would not like to begin your letter with something unpleasant, right? You come up with unpleasant little later, you sandwich your unpleasant between two neutrals, maybe between two positives or between two neutrals, right? Um, so the pattern, becomes very, very important with us. I have a number of examples. I would not be, because of paucity of time, I would not be really able to take all the examples here. So let me take you to, say, two examples here very quickly. And this example becomes important with us because very soon, you'll be writing your cover letter, once you move out of the university. So we have, two important cover letters. We are generally taught in the classroom learning. We have solicited, we have unsolicited. If there is if you see an advertisement in the newspaper, or if you see an advertisement on the website, and you write in response to that particular advertisement, that becomes solicited, right? On the other hand, supposingly, I am here in Greater Noida, but I say my husband moves to Meerut, right? And I decide to move with him to Meerut, and I want to join your university now. So I would obviously, try to find out, somebody whom I know from the university. And in the letter that I would write will become inductive. Why? Because this is not in response to a specific advertisement, to a specific opening, right, in the newsletter or on the website. But here, somebody from your university will really have to create an opening for me, right, in this case. And therefore, I will not be able to use the same pattern, right? I'll not be able to use the same style that I would use, for a letter, which could be in direct response to an advertisement. And therefore, this particular writing will be very different from what I will be writing, right? If it had been an opening. So if it is a direct letter that I need to write, it becomes simpler for me. Why? Because you just talk about the reference right at the very start, and then you write the letter, using a very direct note, right? So we have an example here. So this is, one example that we generally see, in writings, when we write a letter. But be very careful when you have to write an unsolicited letter, when there's no opening. You need to be very careful. And your writing has to be very, very persuasive in that case. And therefore, during pre-writing stage only, you need to decide, how's it that you're going to write this kind of a letter, because this kind of a letter will be very challenging for us. Why? Because what is it that we're doing here? We're trying to convince the audience to buy us, right? There's no opening in the newspaper or on the website at all. And therefore, my writing, would be, my opening of the letter would be very, very different here, right? So for instance, we have an example here. I would read this example for you. For the past 5 years, I've been working as a media officer with Creative Private Limited, New Delhi. I'm now looking for a change of employment which would widen my horizon. It has occurred to me that a growing and promising organization such as yours might be interested in using my services. So what is it that you've done in the first paragraph itself? In a way, you have decided that yes, you'll be talking about yourself right at the very start, but at the same time you'll also use some very important, very significant adjectives for the organization also, right? And therefore, what is it that you're doing? You're meeting your purpose, but then you're also meeting the purpose of the specific organization here, right? So in a way, you're talking about that this particular organization is a very promising one, it is growing in nature, and therefore you would be very interested in joining this particular organization. But at the same time, this particular organization should be able to take you, right, as a candidate, right? Should be able to invite you as a candidate, right? So your writing in this case has become extremely different from what you would have written in case of deductive approach, right? And therefore the approach becomes important here. In this particular presentation, we have more examples, but then I don't think, because of paucity of time, I would really be able to take all of these. Um, so, okay. So let me just take a look at, allow you to take a look at, the two very quick examples here, and then I would like to end the presentation. So here we have a memorandum, over the misuse of office telephones. This particular memorandum, this example, particularly I have taken here because generally, what is it that we do? We become, yes,
Dear madam, you can take your time. It's not always, you're not bound to have the time.
okay,
You can continue your
okay,
slide, please. The
all right.
students are joining your sessions, and
All right,
students are also ready to ask some questions.
all
They're
right,
asking,
yeah,
so we'll be discussing it later on. You can continue,
all
please.
right,
Don't skip slides. Yes.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right, so these two examples here. So yes, so this example, I decided why, because we generally, when we write a disciplinary memorandum, because this has the prefix disciplinary, right? And therefore we tend to be, uh, word, with a tone of authority, right? And that is very very that is not really right, that is not the right tone, even if we are writing a disciplinary memorandum, right? The tone of authority is not the right tone for any writing that should go from one person to another, either in the academic space or in the professional space. And therefore, we need to be very, very careful of our tone, right? So we're all human beings. We all know that we, can make mistakes, and we all learn from our errors, right? And therefore we need to be very very careful, very sensitive of the tone that we use, right? So let us compare the two drafts that we have, and this becomes a very important stage, this during pre-writing stage we really need to decide, what are the kind of words that I will use. So it's not just the ideas that I will use, but also the kind of words that I may use in my writing, right? So this is, one memorandum that goes from the HR head, right, from the head of the administration to the employees. So it says something like this: we have noticed that the employees have been misusing the desk phones. Employees are advised to use the desk phones only for official purposes. The use of office phones for personal reasons must stop with immediate effect, or else strict action would be taken against the employee found guilty. So look at that, it will not really melt down very well with, the audience who would receive this, right? We all know that, it's not right to misuse the desk phone, which is provided to us, but then it is always nicer to use the right tone in order to let the other person know that, right? And therefore, the verbs, like must, must stop, should not really find space, in a writing which is professional in nature, right? And something like strict action would be taken, could be worded properly, more effectively. So let us take a look at how this has been worded here. We have another draft here. So look at that. So this particular draft goes again from Mira Nair. It says something like this. In view of the soaring administrative costs, we have revised a policy on the use of desk phones. So look at that. Here, Mira actually tells the audience, tells the employees that, they are actually, facing some administrative costs. And because of that, they had to revise their policy, right? So here, what is it that she's doing? She's actually, counting on, a very important factor, which is the factor that relates to the heart, right? So she's not just using her mind here; she's also using her heart in order to draft this particular memorandum, right? So the humane quality is very important when you open your letter, when you open your draft, right? So she says, so far, our policy has been to discourage the use of office telephones because of the costs involved. We realize this may not be a convenient solution. So employees can use office telephones for personal calls by paying for each call. So now she has actually hit on the idea here. She really wanted to tell the employees that they will have to really use their own money in order to, uh, call, or in order to use personal calls. In order to make personal calls, they'll have to bank on their own money. But then look at the way she has worded this, right? And this will not really pinch anybody, when this would reach the specific audience. And it says the details of charges have been put on the notice board. So she's been very, very specific in terms of what she has to tell the audience, or what she has to inform the audience. But at the same time, she's been very careful of how she's going to word, what she has to inform. So wording, what you need to inform is extremely important here, right? There's another memorandum which is again very poorly drafted. Because why? Because for two reasons, and these two reasons are important, which we need to realize during pre-writing stage itself. So first, I'm going to read this memorandum for you, and then we're going to have a discussion on this. Every Saturday morning, all supervisors must meet and report on the cleanup of their individual shop floors. All reports must be submitted by afternoon. Also, the supervisors need to get the machines shifted from the third floor. So now this slide becomes very, very important here because of two reasons. One, because this particular memorandum that we just came across is very vaguely worded, right? No specific details have been mentioned. For instance, if you go to this particular slide, it says every Saturday morning, right? It does not tell us about the specific time at all. And then the verb must that has been used here, which we have already discussed, why it should not be used. And then it says by afternoon. Again, specific time has not been really mentioned here. But then what is very important here, this particular memorandum talks about two themes which are extremely different. One is relating to cleanup of the individual shop floors, which needs to be reported. But then the other very another theme that it tries to accommodate in the same memorandum is where the supervisors need to get the machine shifted from the third floor. So now this is very vaguely worded, right? Why? Because of two themes, the audience, the specific audience who has to act on this particular memorandum, may act on one and may not act on the second at all, right? It actually happens, with all of us when we receive mails from the authorities, and it talks about a number of, you know, works, that need to be done, through the day, right? Or if as a faculty member, I, ask my students for some assignments, and these are not the assignments are not very specifically worded, right? And I tell them to do two tasks in just one a draft that I share with them. So they would not really get confused, because they are these are two tasks that this particular memorandum or this particular email would talk about. But then they will have an excuse to talk about, I had actually done this, and the second I could not really do, right? Or one important task would actually slip their mind, right? And therefore, it becomes very important, especially for the shorter writings that we have, whether these are memorandums or the emails that we write, we need to have one theme per mail, one theme per memorandum, right? So that we, the ones who sends this particular memorandum to the employees, also knows that this particular task needs to be done, and then for the next task, another memorandum has to be drafted, or another email has to be drafted, right? And therefore, this is a very important idea that we need to remember, right, during our pre-writing stage, which is one theme per short writing skill, right? Okay. So now, generally, we brainstorm, during this particular stage. We have talked about different situations, which we come across, and then we write. But then, personally, what I have felt, when I write my um, presentations, um, when I write for my presentations, or when I write for my reports, or when I write for my academic papers. So these are two ideas that actually help me. One is listing, and the other is clustering, right? And there are a number of other strategies as well, and you could take a look at those on the internet if you wish to. But then these are two which have actually helped me, right? Now, for instance, we have a topic, that there is a topic that has been given to the students, which is on examinations, a necessary evil. So that becomes your central idea here. That topic will, in a way, make you realize, what is it that you'll be writing. Why? Because here we have a topic which is not a gray topic, which is either a black topic or a white topic for the faculty or for the students, how they think of this particular topic. But then it says a necessary evil, and therefore we know that what is it that we're writing. We're actually talking about the negatives of examination here, right? And therefore the work becomes simpler here. But then always remember, for a topic like this, when we talk about say all the negatives of the topic, in the last paragraph, you are open to talk about your own view. Because why? Because here, this particular topic is actually restricting your imagination. Why? Because it's actually asking you to only talk about negatives here, right? But then, as a person, if you feel that you do not really subscribe to the negatives of examination, and you feel that there are positives as well, then in the last paragraph you should also be talking about what you feel about this particular topic, right? So we were talking about the strategy, which is called listing. So this is how you could list, either in your head or on a paper, right? So we all know that when we're writing a report, or when we're writing an essay, there are different paragraphs, and it is very important for us to paragraph, right? So moving from one paragraph to another in a very uh, 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 in a way, which is very soothing, right, for the audience as well, right? So you making simpler for the audience to move from one idea to the next. Why? Because you have a number of ideas. These are your ideas, but what about the audience? These are not the ideas of the audience. You have to make it simpler for the audience to read through your ideas. And therefore, it is important for us to paragraph properly, very effectively. So moving from one to the next. And this particular strategy actually helps us do that, right? So which is building the topic sentences. So you come up with one topic sentence. In this case, it could be, where you're talking about the causes of stress. So, which could be the parental pressure, their expectations, the cutthroat competition, there could be fear of failure, humiliation. Then you move to the next topic, where you feel that, the classroom learning is confined by the syllabus, a very restrictive syllabus that actually restricts your imagination, and there's no room for creativity. And the entire focus is on the completion of syllabus. Um, so this particular strategy will help you list your ideas either in your head or on the paper, which is a very important pre-writing stage. In the same manner, the next is clustering, where you have say, you could break the topic into different clusters, into different categories. So just don't worry about grammar, don't worry about structure at all at this stage. So it's a very free uh, kind of writing that you're doing right now, right? So you're at your creative best, you're at your imaginative best. Why? Because nobody is actually looking at these drafts, right? So as a faculty member, I would not really ask you to submit these drafts with me, and therefore you are at your imaginative best. So don't worry about your structure here, don't worry about your grammatical errors that you would make here, and write very freely whatever comes to your mind. So this is a very important strategy, again, a very significant strategy that allows you to break your ideas into different categories, right? I would like to end with this very interesting anecdote. So this is a story of a panda um, who goes to a cafeteria, orders a sandwich. Um, when he orders a sandwich, he fires two shots in the air. So everybody around is very, very confused at the behavior of Panda. Why? Because he's shot, he's fired, two shots in the air. So Panda submits a dictionary, which is very poorly worded, right? Where punctuation has not been really taken into account. So it says something like this: panda, large white bear like mammal, native to China, eats, shoots, and leaves. So look at that. If we have a comma which is wrongly placed here, this comma is wrongly placed between eats and shoots. So poor thing, instead of realizing that this particular shoot actually refers to what he should have been eating, right? Here he's actually fires two shots in the air after he orders this sandwich in the cafeteria. So I would like to end with this. There are more examples, very, very interesting ones. So very quickly, I would like you to take a look at this. So very humorous examples again. My client said to his sister, "Let's eat, grandpa." So if you don't put a comma between let's and eat, poor grandpa would be eaten away. We have another example. Ray finds inspiration in cooking her family and a dog. So if you don't put a comma between cooking and her family, poor this would be eaten, right? So this poor dog would be eaten, right? And the family too, right? So would end on this particular on a very humorous note with all of you, and I would love to take questions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak at our request. Your insights and perspectives are truly valuable, and we were all thoroughly engaged and glued by your presentation. It is a pleasure to have you with us in today's lecture, and we hope you enjoyed the experience as much as we did. Your passion for pre-stage writing the most significant stage, really came through in your words. And we are all very much grateful for the knowledge and inspiration you shared with us. We all feel very much blessed to have you today with us. Your contribution as the guest speaker is invaluable and peerless. I wholeheartedly thank you for your time and for sharing your expertise with us. We hope to have the opportunity to associate with you again in the future in an offline mode also. I hope you would accept our invitation.
Complete pleasure and complete honor, Dr. Khanum. It's been a
Uh,
yeah, it's been complete pleasure for me. I have thoroughly enjoyed the session. So if we have questions and if we have time, I would like to take questions. If you don't have, then we could take the questions later.
See, only here is one important question being asked. One of our student, Prithvi Sharma, is asking, ma'am, please give some examples of the deductive orders also.
Okay, all right. So what's the name of the student?
Tripti Sharma, BA student.
Okay, all right. So yes, Tripti, there have had been a number of examples in the presentation, but then I had to, skip those examples. But yes, when you're writing your leave application, right? So how's it that you write your leave application? You generally open the leave application with the central idea, right? So that becomes deductive approach. So when you open the letter with the central idea, that becomes so with the purpose. So the central idea is, of course, is your purpose, right? So that becomes the deductive approach. Another example could be, now supposingly there's a topic that I give to you. For instance, it is say to write on the topic where there's a will, there's a way, right? And you start writing on the topic with explaining the topic. You say, this is how you open it. Where there's a will, there's a way. It means when anybody has made up his mind to do any work, however difficult it may be or clearly impossible, he shall find a way to do it, right? So in that case, what is it? You have an approach that is deductive here. So you've not opened the paragraph or your essay with say with a story or with quotes, but you've started your paragraph straight away with talking about, with explaining the topic, right? That is also the right approach. That is not the wrong approach, as we're pointing out. But then it all depends on the purpose of your writing. What is the purpose of your writing at that time, right? So these are some of the examples, if that is good for you.
Of course, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think students are very well satisfied and they've enjoyed the session today. It is the time to invite my HOD, Department of Languages, Professor Dr. Tushti Sharma, ma'am. Ma'am, you're most welcome, please. And I request you to please give a thank you note, vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rafat. Welcome, Dr. Gurpyari. Jai Hind, everyone. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Subhati University, I would like to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to our esteemed guest, Dr. Gurpyari Bhatnagar, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Sharda University, for gracing us with her presence and delivering an enlightening lecture today. We are truly privileged to have had the opportunity to hear from such an academician in the field of English language. The knowledge and insights shared by her have undoubtedly enriched the understanding of the subject matter and left an indelible impact on our minds. We would like to express our deep appreciation for the meticulous preparation and captivating delivery of the lecture. The depth of research and thought provoking ideas shared by her have not only educated the learners but has also inspired the researchers to explore further and strive for excellence in their respective areas of study. We are grateful for the generosity of time and effort exhibited by Dr. Gurpyari in accepting our invitation and making this lecture a resounding success. Your enthusiasm, passion, and expertise have truly made a lasting impression on all of us present here today. Our sincere thanks go out to the organizing committee, faculty members, and the staff who have worked diligently behind the scene to organize this guest lecture. I would also like to thank the students and participants who actively engaged with the lecture. Thank you all for joining us today and making this guest lecture a memorable one. Jai Hind.
Thank you.